In Oakford, everything appeared to be picture-perfect. A small town where everyone knew everyone, where the church stood proudly at the heart of the community, and where life was simple. On Sundays, the church was filled with families, all gathered to listen to Father Michael Roberts, his voice echoing through the pews as he offered words of comfort and faith. To the people of Oakford, Father Roberts was more than just a priest. He was a pillar of the community, a trusted figure who had dedicated his life to guiding the people of this town through their darkest times. Father Michael Roberts had been in Oakford for over a decade. His presence at the pulpit was comforting, and his ability to connect with the townspeople made him a figure of immense respect. But no one knew that behind the image of the devoted priest, there was a man living a life full of secrets, a life he was determined to keep hidden. Sarah Lawson, a beloved schoolteacher, was also a fixture of Oakford. Her students adored her, and her colleagues respected her for her dedication. Sarah had a warmth about her that drew people in, a kind soul whose passion for teaching was evident in everything she did. But like Father Roberts, Sarah, too, was hiding something, a secret that would soon come to light. Behind closed doors, Sarah and Father Roberts were having an affair, a relationship that began innocently enough, but soon grew into something much more complicated. For years, the two had secretly met, their bond hidden from the eyes of the town they both served. Sarah, deeply in love with the priest, thought she had found something meaningful, while Father Roberts, trapped in his vows and the weight of his own guilt, struggled to keep his double life a secret. The town of Oakford was built on trust, and to the people, the church was a sanctuary, a place where they could escape the troubles of the world and find solace in their faith. But all of that was about to change. A hidden affair, a web of lies, and a betrayal would soon unravel, turning this town upside down. And with it, a life would be lost. To the people of Oakford, Father Michael Roberts was a man of unwavering faith. His sermons were filled with wisdom, his guidance sought by all. But behind his calm, comforting exterior was a man consumed by guilt and shame. The priest, a symbol of purity to his congregation, had been hiding a dangerous secret, an affair that had been going on for years. It all began innocently. The quiet companionship of two people, both seeking solace in each other's company. Father Roberts, a man of the cloth, had dedicated his life to serving God. But over time, the isolation and the temptation of Sarah's affection proved too strong to resist. She, a woman of beauty and charm, had unknowingly captivated the priest's heart, and he, despite his vows of chastity and service, found himself falling deeper into a forbidden love. For Sarah, it started as a simple friendship. The late-night conversations, the stolen moments, the kind words from a man she trusted. She confided in him about her doubts, her dreams, her fears, and slowly, the bond between them grew. But what started as an innocent connection soon spiraled into something much darker, more complex. For years, their affair remained a secret. Whispers behind closed doors, stolen kisses, and heated exchanges that neither could deny. Father Roberts, torn between his vows and his feelings for Sarah, promised her everything she wanted, while secretly telling himself that it would end soon. But promises, like all secrets, have a way of unraveling. As the years passed, Sarah began to grow weary of being kept in the shadows. She wanted more than fleeting moments in the dark. She wanted a life with Father Roberts, one where they could be open about their love. But Father Roberts was bound by more than just his vows. He was bound by the expectations of the church, the town, and the role he had created for himself in Oakford. Eventually, Sarah's patience wore thin. She wanted answers. She wanted more than just promises. She wanted the truth. And in a heated confrontation, she demanded that Father Roberts make a choice. Leave the priesthood, leave the church, and be with her, or walk away for good. Father Roberts, shaken by the confrontation, promised Sarah he would find a way to be with her. But deep down, he knew it would never happen. His life, his vocation, was too deeply tied to Oakford and the church. The affair, once hidden in the shadows, was now on the brink of exposure, and with it, the potential to destroy everything. At that moment, Sarah made a decision of her own. She had had enough of living in secrecy. The town deserved to know the truth. And so, she did what many thought would be impossible. She went to a journalist, revealing the affair to the world. The scandal was about to break, and nothing would ever be the same again. On a crisp autumn morning, the quiet town of Oakford was rocked by a revelation that would shatter everything. Sarah Lawson, the respected schoolteacher who had been living in the shadows of her affair, made a decision that would change her life forever. She walked into the local newspaper office, holding in her hands the power to expose a secret that had been hidden for far too long. Inside the envelope was everything. The truth about Sarah's relationship with Father Michael Roberts, the priest revered by the entire town. For years, their affair had been kept secret, until now. Sarah's courage in coming forward sent ripples through Oakford, and soon, the entire town would know the truth. The story hit the streets like wildfire. The front page of Oakford's weekly newspaper featured a photo of Sarah and Father Roberts, smiling at a community event. Beneath it, the headline screamed, "Town's beloved priest involved in secret affair." The explosive details of their years-long relationship were laid bare for all to see. There was no hiding anymore. As the news spread, the town was divided. Some were stunned, unable to reconcile the image of the man they trusted with the reality of his betrayal. Others rallied behind Father Roberts, defending him against the accusations. But the damage had been done. The town was no longer the place it once was. Trust, once sacred, was now fractured. For Father Roberts, the revelation was nothing short of devastating. The man who had stood before his congregation, preaching love, trust, and faith, was now a symbol of betrayal. As he read the newspaper, the full extent of the damage became clear. His career, his reputation, and his place in the town were all at risk. But worse than that, he had lost the one thing he had once believed in, the trust of the people. Father Roberts wandered the empty church in a daze, the once sacred walls now closing in around him. The church, a place where he had preached for years, had become a prison of his own making. With every step, the weight of the scandal bore down on him. The people he had once served with unwavering devotion now viewed him with disdain. He could no longer escape the consequences of his actions. Sarah, too, felt the gravity of the situation. While part of her was relieved to no longer carry the burden of secrecy, another part of her was filled with dread. The town was reeling, and now, there was no turning back. She had chosen to expose the affair, but in doing so, she had unknowingly set into motion a chain of events that would spiral out of control. The revelation had far-reaching consequences. Father Roberts scrambled to make sense of what had happened. He tried to salvage his dignity, his position, even his faith, but it was too late. The affair was no longer just a secret between two people. It was a scandal that consumed the town, and the backlash would be relentless. For Sarah, the price of exposing the truth was about to become much higher than she could ever have imagined. The townspeople had already begun to take sides, and as the days went on, she found herself isolated, both from her community and from the man she once loved. As the scandal unfolded, Oakford's once tight-knit community began to fracture. The revelation of Father Michael Roberts' affair sent waves of shock and disbelief through the town, and now, the aftermath of that truth was beginning to tear at the very fabric of Oakford. What was once a serene, trusting town had become a battlefield of judgment and accusations. For Father Roberts, the fallout from the affair was far worse than he had anticipated. He had spent years cultivating an image of reverence and respect, but now, that image was shattered. The town no longer saw him as the man of faith they once trusted, but as the man who had betrayed them all. His every move was now scrutinized. Every word, every action, was a reflection of his guilt. And as the pressure mounted, Father Roberts found himself cornered, unable to escape the consequences of his own actions. Alone in the church, Father Roberts found no solace in prayer, no peace in the sanctity of his surroundings. The church, once a place of refuge, now felt like a prison. He could no longer hide behind his collar or his sermons. The truth had been exposed, and with it, all of his secrets were laid bare for the world to see. He felt the walls closing in, the suffocating pressure of the scandal pushing him to the edge. Sarah, too, felt the weight of the town's judgment. Though she had exposed the truth, the people of Oakford were not kind to her for it. In the eyes of many, she was just as guilty as Father Roberts. Her life, once filled with the warmth of community, had now become a battleground. Friends became strangers, colleagues avoided eye contact, and the once friendly streets of Oakford had become a maze of hostile stares. The truth had set her free, but it had also made her a pariah. At night, Sarah found no peace. Every knock on her door, every ring of the phone sent her into a panic. She had done what she thought was right, but now she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The secret she had carried for so long was out, but with it, so were the consequences. No one was coming to her defense. In the eyes of the town, she was just as much the villain as the priest who had betrayed them. Behind the scenes, Father Roberts was making desperate attempts to salvage what was left of his life. He reached out to those who might still offer him a lifeline: old friends, church authorities, even Sarah, though his attempts at reconciliation had fallen on deaf ears. He was a man with nowhere to turn, consumed by guilt and the looming threat of losing everything. For Sarah, the tension was unbearable. She had no idea how far Father Roberts would go to protect himself, and the uncertainty of what might happen next haunted her every waking moment. Had she exposed him, only to make herself the target of a much darker force? And now, as the town's tension reached a boiling point, something darker was at play. Father Roberts had nothing left to lose. In his eyes, the only way out was to eliminate the very source of his destruction, Sarah Lawson. It was a night like any other, but for Sarah, it felt different. A sense of dread hung in the air, thick and suffocating. As she stepped outside to lock the door behind her, a chill ran down her spine. The silence around her felt unnatural, as though something, or someone, was watching, waiting. Father Roberts had reached the point of no return. His mind, clouded by guilt and desperation, had convinced him that there was no other choice but to eliminate Sarah once and for all. The woman who had exposed his darkest secret had to be silenced. With every step closer to her doorstep, the tension in his chest grew, but so did his determination. There would be no turning back now. Inside the house, Sarah's anxiety deepened. Her heart raced as she tried to shake the feeling that something was wrong. Was it her imagination? Or had Father Roberts somehow tracked her down, determined to confront her? Or worse, unbeknownst to Sarah, the threat was already at her doorstep. Father Roberts had circled the house, now in the backyard, where a small, barely noticeable window provided an entry point. With steady hands, he reached into his pocket and pulled out the object he had brought with him, a weapon that would seal Sarah's fate. With the window open, the last barrier between him and Sarah was gone. He moved swiftly, like a man on a mission, and before Sarah could react, the door was pushed open from behind. The air in the room shifted as the unmistakable presence of another person filled the space. Sarah's heart skipped a beat, but before she could turn around, the room was flooded with darkness. The blow came swiftly, a single moment of violence that shattered her life in an instant. Sarah Lawson, the woman who had exposed the priest's dark secrets, was dead. Father Roberts had succeeded in his twisted mission, and in that one act, he had ensured that nothing would stand in his way again. The dark path he had chosen would only lead him deeper into the abyss. The very secrets he had tried to protect had now consumed him completely, and with Sarah's murder, there would be no escaping the consequences. His soul, once bound by faith, was now irrevocably lost. The quiet town of Oakford had been forever changed. The murder of Sarah Lawson sent shockwaves through the community, shattering the illusion of safety that had once defined the small town. The authorities, stunned by the brutality of the crime, launched an immediate investigation. What had seemed like an isolated tragedy was now a complex case, a crime that was both deeply personal and carefully orchestrated. This wasn't a random act of violence. The precision with which Sarah was killed points to someone who knew her, someone who had been watching her, perhaps even stalking her. But what could have driven this person to murder? And why Sarah, of all people? We were just beginning to peel back the layers of this case, but one thing was clear. Father Roberts was at the center of it. Father Roberts had been under scrutiny ever since Sarah exposed his affair. His sudden, erratic behavior only added fuel to the fire. Detectives quickly pieced together his movements that night, and it became clear that he had been in the vicinity of Sarah's house just hours before her death. But could he have really been capable of such a violent act? As the investigation deepened, more and more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The townspeople's accounts painted a clear picture of Sarah's life unraveling in the days before her death. But it was Father Robert's actions, his desperation to cover his tracks, that drew the attention of investigators. Detectives also uncovered a disturbing detail: a small silver cross, left at the scene of the crime, a potential clue pointing directly to Father Roberts. It seemed as though he had been trying to leave behind a sign, perhaps as a twisted way of marking his territory. But the question remained: was this just a symbolic gesture, or had he left it there to mislead the investigation? As the investigation narrowed in on Father Roberts, the question loomed larger. Would he confess, or would he continue to hide behind his carefully constructed lies? His future, once filled with certainty and faith, was now clouded with suspicion. And as the walls closed in, there was no escape from the darkness that had consumed him. The trial of Father Roberts became a spectacle that captured the attention of Oakford and beyond. What had started as a quiet town had now been thrust into the public eye, and as the case against the priest unfolded, the town's divided opinions became impossible to ignore. Was he a man driven to murder by guilt, or a cold-blooded killer who had used his faith to conceal a much darker nature? As the trial began, the prosecution laid out a damning case against Father Roberts. Witnesses testified about his affair with Sarah, the lies, and the tension that had been building in the town for weeks. The defense, however, tried to paint him as a man driven to the edge by guilt and the loss of everything he held dear. But in the eyes of the jury, the evidence was undeniable. The evidence, though circumstantial, was overwhelming. The blood found at the scene matched Father Roberts' clothing, and his fingerprints were found on the small silver cross left at the crime scene. The most damning evidence, however, came from the investigation into his movements that night. Surveillance footage from the town's camera system showed him near Sarah's house just before the murder, his face shadowed but unmistakable. Despite the mounting evidence, Father Roberts continued to maintain his innocence, insisting he was being framed. His defense team tried to cast doubt on the prosecution's case, claiming there was no direct proof of his involvement in the murder. But for the people of Oakford, there was little room for doubt. The priest they had trusted had become the very embodiment of betrayal. Sarah was more than just a woman who exposed a secret. She was a daughter, a friend, a mother. And no matter what happens here today, we will never get her back. I hope you understand the weight of that loss. After days of testimony, the jury was sent to deliberate. In a trial that had captivated the town's attention, there was only one question that remained. Would Father Roberts face the consequences of his actions? Or would he walk free, his crime buried under layers of manipulation and deceit? Finally, the jury returned with their verdict. The town of Oakford held its breath, waiting for justice to be served. Father Roberts, the man who had once held the trust of his community, was now a convicted murderer. The weight of his crime was too great to escape. Father Roberts' trial was the culmination of a tragic chain of events, but the question remained: would this conviction truly bring closure to a community torn apart by betrayal? For Sarah's family, justice had been served, but the pain of her loss would never fade. In the end, the truth came out, but at what cost? The trial of Father Roberts was the final chapter in a story that had left the town of Oakford forever scarred. What was once a close-knit community was now fractured, its residents struggling to reconcile the man they had trusted with the truth that had shattered everything. Justice, though served, could not undo the damage done. Sarah Lawson's life was stolen by a man who should have been a pillar of her community, a man who twisted his power for selfish desires. But even in death, Sarah's truth had set others free. Her bravery in exposing the affair and bringing Father Robert's dark secret to light had cost her life, but it had also forced the people of Oakford to face the uncomfortable reality that not everything is as it seems. The consequences of the priest's actions would ripple through this town for generations. For Father Roberts, the prison walls offered no solace. The life he had once known, built on trust and faith, was gone, replaced by a bleak reality of isolation and guilt. And though he had silenced Sarah in the most violent way imaginable, the truth had outlived him, exposing him as the man he truly was. In the end, there are no true winners in this story. The victim, Sarah, will never return. Her family will carry the weight of their grief forever. And Oakford, forever scarred by the betrayal of one of its own, will never be the same. But the truth, no matter how painful, has a way of breaking free, even in the darkest of times. And for Sarah, that truth will live on, a testament to her courage and the price she paid for exposing the lies that shattered her world.
Thanks for watching. For more interesting videos, please subscribe.